He joked in Arabic. The black waitress answered, fluently and silenced. All began on a humid evening that made the glass walls of the rooftop restaurant glow like a slow sunset. The city below hummed with horns and hungry voices. Inside, the lights were warm and soft, but the air felt tight, like a held breath. A man in a dark suit walked in first, shoulders back, chin high, gold watch catching every lamp as if it owned the room. His name was Adrian Cole, and people said he could buy silence, shape news, and pull a deal across oceans just by smiling. Two partners followed, laughing too loudly, the kind of laugh that pushes others away. Nia, a black waitress with calm eyes and a steady spine, stepped forward with water and a quiet, "Good evening." Adrian glanced at her hand when she offered a greeting, then looked away, shaking his head with a small smirk like the sound of a door closing. He leaned into his partners and joked in Arabic, confident no one here would follow the curve of his words. He said something mean and small, the kind of line rich men say to prove they still have teeth. Nia didn't flinch. She placed a napkin by his plate, gentle as a leaf landing on water, and answered back in clear, fluent Arabic. "Respect is the first course, sir. Without it, nothing you order will taste right." The words fell into the room like silver coins, ringing once and then forever. The table went silent. Adrian blinked, then blinked again. The joke stuck between his teeth. Nia switched to English, her voice even. "The company you're trying to buy? Their workers are afraid to speak. Some haven't been paid overtime in months. If you can't respect the person serving your table, how will you protect the people building your future?" The partners froze. Phones buzzed. A trending post from a factory worker. A forwarded email from a labor lawyer. A message from a reporter asking for comment. Adrian's grin faded like a light losing power. He cleared his throat and stood up. His hand offered again, this time careful, this time human. Nia nodded at the gesture but didn't take it. "Let your actions speak." For the first time that night, the loudest thing in the room was not his voice, but the truth. And even the city below seemed to pause, listening for what would happen. Next, as he joked in Arabic, the black waitress answered fluently and silenced all, became not just a title, but a weight in every chest. Adrian tried to breathe and found the air heavier than before. He looked at his partners, Evan and Priyanka, and saw in their eyes what he had trained himself never to see: doubt. Evan slid his phone across the table, a screen full of warnings from their legal team. Potential wage violations, media interest rising, buyer risk high. Priyanka leaned forward, fingers laced, her face calm only on the surface. "We can't pretend we don't know, Adrian," she said quietly. "If we close this deal in the dark and the lights turn on later, we lose more than money." Nia stood a respectful step back, ready to take the order, but Adrian heard the question under the question. What kind of man are you really? He thought of how many rooms he had walked into like this, how many waiters he had ignored, how many small kindnesses he had stepped over on his way to something he called bigger. He thought of his grandfather's hands, scarred, steady, and proud, and how he used to say, "Son, if you don't lift the smallest person in the room will lower you instead." He had not listened in many years. "We fix this first," Adrian whispered to his partners, the words almost a prayer. Nia gave a small nod that felt like a test he had barely passed. But the test was not over. In the kitchen, the staff had paused to listen. The dishwasher, a young man named Luis with tired eyes and a singer's quiet heart, stood with foam on his hands and a question in his chest. The line cooks leaned on their stations. The pastry chef pressed her lips together. Nia's voice, calm, clear, had slipped like clean water under every door. And the rumor already moved through the building, through the street, through the network of phones. A waitress had told the truth to a man who bought futures. The night bent around that truth, and everything that followed took its shape from it. Nia stepped away to give them space, but her steps were not a retreat. She moved like someone who knew who she was, who she had been, and who she would be tomorrow. In her locker, behind a small mirror and a folded photo of her mother, she kept a notebook filled with quiet details. Names of people who worked too many hours. Notes on a certain factory on the river where doors locked from the outside at night. She had not wanted to hold these truths. But when a woman she once knew, Amina, a factory line supervisor with a scar near her eyebrow, whispered to her one afternoon, "I don't sleep anymore. The machines ring in my head," Nia had begun to write, not to accuse, to remember, to keep the thread in her hand so it would not be cut. She had learned Arabic as a child, evenings at her aunt's table, tracing letters that curled like vines, listening to stories that crossed deserts and oceans. It was not a party trick. It was a bridge. And tonight she had used that bridge to carry a message from the people no one looked at to the people everyone obeyed. Back at the table, Adrian was reading the posts. A video flashed, a grainy shot, of a woman leaving the factory at midnight, rubbing her wrists where her gloves had bruised her skin. The caption read, "30 hours this weekend. Overtime refused. We are so tired." There were 64,000 likes and climbing, comments from other factories, comments from students, comments from healthcare workers who knew the dull ache of being unseen. Adrian felt something like the ocean tilt inside him. "Where is this plant?" he asked. "Rivergate," Priyanka said. 2 hours north, old brick building with a new logo. Evan sighed. Due diligence missed this. Or we missed due diligence. Same sin. Adrian looked at Nia. "Do you know someone there?" She met his eyes, steady. "I know the silence there. I know what silence does to people." He nodded once. "I want to see it." His voice was low. "Tonight." Evan raised a brow. "Now?" "Now," Adrian said. "Phones off, cameras off, no entourage. We go as people, not as a parade." Priyanka held his gaze a moment longer, testing for performance, then gave a short nod. "Okay, but if we go, we listen. We don't talk over them." Adrian's face changed in a small way, like a muscle deciding to work again. They left by the service elevator. It hummed the way old machines sing to themselves at night. Nia gathered her notes and a jacket the color of dusk. "You don't have to come," Adrian said at the alley door. "I know," she replied, tying her hair back, "but you might miss what matters if I don't." They drove in Evan's quiet car, the city pulling off its jewelry as they passed. Less neon, more dark, more truth. The sky above the river was a blank page, waiting. The factory looked too old to be so busy. Brick walls, tall windows, thin gray smoke. A single security light flickered as if it were tired of seeing. They parked behind a line of delivery trucks and walked around to a side entrance where the concrete carried the smell of oil and rain. A metal door opened and an older man stepped out, rubbing his knees. He had a badge that said "Foreman" and a voice that sounded like a long road. "We're closed," he said. "No tours. Come back tomorrow." Nia spoke first, almost a whisper. "We're not here to tour, Mr. Boyd. We came to listen." The name surprised him. He looked at her, his face softening the way stone softens when water sits with it long enough. "Do I know you?" "You knew Amina," Nia said. "We need to know why she's afraid lately." Boyd glanced inside, then back, then inside again. Rules were falling in his head like dominoes tipped by a quiet hand. He stepped aside and held the door a crack wider. 10 minutes, he said. No cameras. The air inside was warm and damp, heavy with the kind of sadness that smells like metal. Machines slept like animals in the dark. A vending machine hummed alone in a corner, the glare of its light making the shadows around it deeper. Boyd led them down a short hall to a break room with 3 plastic chairs and a wall clock that ran 5 minutes fast. "She's not here tonight," Boyd said, "but I can tell you why she's tired. He rubbed his palms together. There's pressure, big orders, fewer people than last year. Over time, that's complicated. You want truth. 2 months ago, we were told to relabel timesheets. Split the hours, they said. Shift pay to next cycle. I did as told. Priyanka's pen paused. Adrian stared at the clock. Who told you? Boyd swallowed. Regional ops. A man named Kincaid. He says the margins are tight and the new buyer wants a clean book. Adrian felt heat on his face that had nothing to do with the plant. I am the new buyer, he said softly, and I never asked for that. Boyd blinked. Then you should meet Kincaid. They found Kincaid before Kincaid found them. He came down the hall fast, tie loose, jaw tight, phone in his hand like a weapon. Who are you? He barked. This is private property. Evan showed his card. Priyanka showed hers. Adrian didn't show anything. He simply looked at the man and asked, How many hours did you move off the book this quarter? Kincaid laughed in a way that said he had been getting away with this for a long time. I don't know what you're talking about. Nia stepped forward, neither angry nor afraid, and placed her notebook on the table. It was not a trap, just a mirror. She opened to a page with dates and initials and small stories. The mother, who skipped dinner to keep the light bill paid, the student who cut class to work a second shift, the old man who sold his tools to buy medicine. Nia spoke like a teacher, walking a child through the truth. If you lose track of numbers, maybe you will remember faces. Kincaid's smile slipped. Adrian leaned in. We're not here to ruin you. We're here to stop this. He reached for Kincaid's phone and the man jerked back, but then something changed in his eyes. He saw that he was not, in fact, the biggest thing in the room anymore. Fine, Kincaid muttered. Some hours weren't logged right. But people will get paid. Eventually. Eventually, Nia repeated, tasting the word like something spoiled. Eventually is a slow thief. Adrian looked at Boyd. If the regional office pressured you, you will not carry this alone. Boyd's shoulders dropped in a way that made him look taller. Thank you, he said. But the night did not let them leave easy. A group of workers stepped into the break room, drawn by rumor and the sound of a door opening where it usually stayed shut. A young woman with deep circles under her eyes asked, Are you really the buyer? Adrian nodded. She looked at Nia, then back. Do you know what it feels like when the clock says go home, but the floor boss says stay and the pay slip says nothing? Her voice shook. It feels like your life is being erased, one tiny line at a time. Adrian swallowed the stone in his throat. I know now, he said, and I am sorry for how long it took me to learn. The truth was a tide that did not go out. They drove back before dawn. The city met them with a thin blue line on the edge of every window. Adrian had the look of a man who had walked to the end of himself and found a door. In the car, he said little. When they reached the restaurant, the staff was cleaning the last tables, dragging chairs softly so as not to wake the morning. Nia went to the back and washed her hands as if rinsing off the dust of the factory, the oil, the fear clinging to the words she had heard. She returned to the dining room and found Adrian waiting by the window that looked over the waking street. He held a paper, folded neatly, a letter he had written in the passenger seat on the ride back. May I read this to you? He asked. She nodded. He read, To the workers of Rivergate and every place like it, we did not see you. That is our first failure. We did not ask the right questions. That is our second. We will pay what is owed. That is the beginning. We will add what is fair. That is the next step. We will build a structure where the truth cannot be hidden. That is the goal. Until then, we stand here to listen. He lowered the paper. It's not enough, he said, but it's a start I can hold myself to. Nia listened. Words can build, she said, but only if you carry them into rooms where people are used to putting them down. Adrian folded the letter again, as if to keep it in his pocket and close to his heart. He turned to his partners. Emergency board meeting. Today. Evan exhaled like he had been underwater all night. Priyanka checked her watch. 2 hours, she said. We can get half the board in person and the rest on screen. Adrian looked at Nia. Would you come? She raised a brow. To the boardroom. To the truth, he said. You have a better map than I do. She considered it. I will come if you understand one thing. I'm not there to help you look good. I'm there to help you do good. Adrian nodded, and it wasn't just agreement. It was permission, given to her and taken from himself. The boardroom was high and bright, all glass and metal and sharp lines like ideas you could cut your hand on. The table smelled faintly of lemon polish. People filed in, directors with old eyes, advisors with new suits, lawyers who needed fewer words than they carried. Adrian stood at the head of the table and surprised them by not speaking first. He pointed to Nia. Please, he said. A few eyebrows climbed, but she did not shrink. She stepped forward, placed her notebook on the table where everyone could see it, and told a story. Not a speech. A story with real people in it. The room changed shape around that story. She spoke about Amina and Luis, about the foreman with tired knees who kept a brave smile for his team, about the young worker who counted hours like a child counting stars and finding the sky blank. She left out no pain, but she also left space for dignity, for the small graces people kept giving each other in the break room when the clock refused to. She did not use big words, but she carried big truth, and it had more weight than any report. Adrian watched faces soften and close, like hands undecided about how to hold what they were being given. When she finished, the room was so quiet the air conditioning sounded like wind in a far-off field. The chairwoman, a woman named Laurel with silver hair and a gaze like a straight road, spoke. Thank you, she said to Nia. We should have invited voices like yours long ago. Then she turned to Adrian. You brought us a mirror. What do you intend to do when it shows you something you don't like? Adrian's voice did not rise. We pay everything owed immediately with interest. We end any practice that hides hours or punishes speech. We establish an independent line for workers to report harm without fear. We set a public standard and invite our competitors to meet it. We go to Rivergate, not with cameras but with contracts that promise respect and penalties for us if we break it. A director cleared his throat. This will cost us millions. Adrian looked at him the way you look at a door you can either lock or open. It will save us something worth more. Laurel nodded slowly. Put it to a vote. Hands went up, some slow, some quick, a few trembling. The motion passed. Not unanimous, but enough. And in that gap, the gap between yes and no, Adrian felt the proper kind of fear. The fear of failing people who trusted you before you deserved it. News moved fast. Not because the company sent a press release first, but because people did. Workers texted co-workers. A daughter told her mother. A retired machinist told his old friend at the barber shop. A local teacher told a class of kids who were learning how to count hours and fairness at the same time. In the afternoon, Adrian, Nia, Priyanka, and Evan drove back to Rivergate with signed papers in a folder and an honest plan in the trunk. They did not bring a crowd. They brought quiet. They walked the floor with Boyd, who seemed younger by 10 years now that his back could stand straight under a lighter sky. The machines rattled and clanked in a music that felt less like a warning and more like a heartbeat. Amina met them near the assembly line, her eyes bright, her mouth unsure. Is it true? She asked Nia, as if she didn't dare ask the others. Nia's smile was small but real. Yes, she said. And if it turns false, we will make it true again. Adrian handed Amina a letter in her own language and in English. This is the new policy, he said. It was written with you in mind. If it breaks, I want you to be the first to tell us. Amina read the first line and covered her mouth. Then she did something no one expected. She took Adrian's hand and pressed it to the grease-stained edge of the machine she worked at, leaving a dark smudge on his skin. Now you carry us, she said. On your hands where you can see. Adrian did not wipe it off. Not all lessons should be cleaned quickly. Kincaid watched from the doorway, his jaw tight, then turned and walked out into the yard, where a security guard took his badge and gave him a cardboard box. It was not revenge. It was the end of a story that needed ending. The change did not feel like fireworks. It felt like water finally running in a pipe that had been dry so long people forgot what running sounded like. Payslips grew heavier by a number that mattered. A night guard who wrote poetry in his head dared to put one on paper because he had 1 hour more to rest. A mother picked up her child before the sun dipped, not after. Boyd made tea for his crew during break and listened without checking his watch twice. It was not perfect, and the old fear kept trying to raise its head like a bad habit. But every time it did, someone pointed to the new line posted on the wall. No retaliation. No silence. Weeks later, the city hosted a public forum about fair work. People filled the small theater, coats on laps, hands ready. Adrian took the stage with Laurel and Priyanka. Nia sat in the front row among the workers, not on the stage because she did not want a spotlight that could blind others. The moderator asked a sharp question about profits. A student stood and asked about the dignity of hands. An older woman asked about retirement for those who had already given too many weekends to machines. Adrian answered without a shield. "We can only be proud of profit if we can be proud of the path we took to it," he said. "If we are ashamed of the path, then the profit is only noise." A murmur moved through the room, not quite applause, but the kind of sound people make when their shoulders lower and they let themselves believe 1 inch more. Near the end, the moderator said, "We began with a story. We should end with one. Miss Nia, would you share the words you said that first night?" Nia stood, voice steady, eyes soft. "Respect is the first course," she repeated. "Without it, nothing you order will taste right." The room breathed in like a tide turning. Adrian looked at his hands where the grease once marked him and felt a weight that was not heavy, but holy, the weight of promise. That night, Adrian walked alone down the same street where he had once walked like a king. He saw the restaurant window and the table where he had first shrunk in front of a truth he could not buy. He saw the corner where the dishwasher had paused to listen, and the place by the bar where Nia had tied her hair back before walking into a factory that would change her life as much as his. He stopped under a street lamp and took out the letter he had written that first dawn. He read it again. He changed a line with his pen. "We stand here to listen," he had written. He added, "We walk with you to work." Then he folded it and slipped it into his wallet behind the photo of his grandfather, whose scarred hands seemed to nod in the lamplight. He lifted his face to the sky. It was ordinary and full of small stars. He had always wanted larger lights. He had learned to love these instead. The phone in his pocket buzzed. A message from Priyanka. First checks delivered. People crying good tears. Another from Evan. Press wants quotes. He typed, "Give them the plan. Give them the proof. Give them the names of the people who made us see." He put the phone away. There are nights that belong to noise and speed. This one belonged to footsteps and breath, and the soft sound of a city remembering it has a heart. Much later, when the story was told on screens big and small, when a clip of Nia's gentle voice in Arabic found its way into houses that didn't know the shape of those words, a child in another town turned to her mother and asked, "Can we learn that language?" The mother smiled. "We can learn the language of respect first," she said. "After that, all words come easier." In a classroom where a teacher kept a jar of spare pencils for anyone too shy to ask, a poster appeared on the wall. Respect is the first course. In a hospital break room where a nurse rubbed her temples after a 14-hour shift, someone taped the same line beside the clock. In a mechanic's shop where a man in a worn cap fixed a stranger's car and refused extra pay, a small sign on the counter read, "Nothing tastes right without respect." Not because a famous person said it, but because a waitress knew it and said it at the right time, and the right time can travel farther than any car. And in the restaurant where it began, where the glass walls still caught the light like patient gold, Nia finished her shift and sat for a moment by the window, drinking water from a clean glass that caught her reflection. She thought of her mother, who had taught her to speak with 2 hands and 1 heart. She thought of the first time she wrote a name in her notebook and how heavy her pen had felt, as if writing could change lives. She thought of Amina and Boyd and the young woman who had asked, "Is it true?" and then learned how to ask, "What's next?" She felt tired, but it was an honest tired, the kind that comes after you have carried something all the way to the right door. Adrian walked in quietly, no gold watch tonight, just a plain face with lines that looked earned, not drawn. He did not try to shake hands. He did not give a speech. He sat down on the other side of the window, the city between them like a book they were still reading. "Thank you," he said, and the words did not sound small. "Not for helping me, for helping us." Nia nodded, and her smile was like a light held in a careful hand. "Let your actions keep speaking," she said softly. "And if they stop, we will speak again." Outside, the night carried their words away and gave them to someone who needed them. Inside, the staff stacked chairs slow and neat. The kitchen flicked off one light, then another. The last sound was the click of a door that would open again tomorrow to people who needed a place to sit and to be seen before they could be fed. And as the screen fades, we return to the name that held the whole journey steady, and we say it one more time so there is no doubt what story we have promised to keep living. He joked in Arabic. The black waitress answered fluently and silenced all.